For your summer vacation, chances are you're planning to travel as far as possible within your budget. But we're going to take a look at a book today that may convince you to stay closer to home. The topic of the day is local history nonfiction. Hi, I'm Justine and this is Bookends. Today we're featuring a book called Hidden Ontario by Terry Boyle. It's about the secrets and sometimes bizarre stories of Ontario's past. Now we're at a local bookshop in Creemore, Ontario called Curiosity House Books. I'm going to chat with one of the owners to get a few other local history recommendations. Let's go on in. I've got Terry Boyle with me here, author of Hidden Ontario. Terry, thanks so much for meeting up with us today.
Wonderful to be here.
So what got you all interested in local history and local travel?
Well, I started 35 years ago, traveling the province. My first book was Old Homesteads of Ontario in '79. And that got me started. I was a journalist before that. And then I started traveling the province, gathering stories. And I've done that for 35 years. So I have all these collections of stories that I haven't always done a lot with, and so Hidden Ontario was compiling them together and then putting them into a book. So kind of unusual stories, characters, places.
What got you interested in it, though, originally? You know, like, why local? Why, you know, people usually go to France or Britain.
Yeah.
Why local?
Well, I was raised by a grandmother that was born on a farm in Havelock, Ontario in 1889. So I grew up with all the old stories of the Ontario countryside, and I think I was totally captivated as a child. And that stayed with me, and when I became a writer, I thought, you know, I think I'm going to go back and discover people's roots.
What's your process when you research these local stories?
Yeah, you have to go to every place. I mean, you can't write a story from your desk, right? You have to go there, interview the people, get a feel of the locale, and then kind of weave the story together. So when I'm writing it, you're there. You feel like you're there. It's like a good ghost story I might write, right?
Yeah.
You're there, you get the sensing of what it's like, how magical it might be, and then it entices you to come out and visit a lot of these places, right?
Is it hard for someone like you to write this kind of a book when you're not a local yourself?
No, I never thought that way. I've always thought of community as wherever you are and you're a part of the larger picture. So for me, I feel quite comfortable coming into a town I'm not living in. And as long as you do your research, you're safe. But if you don't do the research, you're not safe, right? So then people know you've been there.
When you go somewhere for the very first time, do you just show up or do you do research beforehand?
No, I usually show up. I mean, I want to be enticed by what I see, and then that'll spark my interest. And book signings. When I do book signings, people always tell me little tidbits of information, a story here about this place, and I write it down. And I say to them, well, I might not phone you for 2 or 3 years, but I may. And then I phone them up, and then I follow up on the lead, right? So over the years, you get so many of those leads, and that's what draws me to a place, right? Often.
Now, when you were doing all your research on these towns and traveling around getting to know these towns, what do you think really defines a town?
Well, I think the history defines the town. I think who first came to a community, what they did. I mean, we have no idea the hardship. I mean, you know, if you read early accounts of the first settlers arriving, I'm not talking about the native peoples, the first settlers, they were in a forested area where you couldn't even see the sun. That's how thick the forest was, right? So you can just imagine arriving there and thinking, oh my God, I've got to, what am I going to do now? You know, and they were days and days and days just to clear an acre to build a home. And I'm always very interested in the link between First Nations and the early settlers and what transpired between that. Because when you deal with history in Ontario, whether Canada, you've got thousands and thousands of years of occupation by Native peoples in the area. And so a lot of that history is intertwined with the first settlers coming in. So I'll give you an example. The story in the book, Baldoon Mysteries, is the oldest ghost story in Ontario. That was near Wallaceburg, Ontario, right? But that was about a native woman that had cursed a settler family because they wanted the land that they were on. And bullets would come through the the door and drop on the floor. Fireballs would suddenly appear in the room. They came down one day and the baby was crying in the crib and there were hot stones underneath the baby. And all this activity went on. It was the MacDonald family. Eventually, the entities, the spirits burnt the homestead down and the MacDonalds fled. But they found out later through a clairvoyant young girl that lived in Long Point near Lake Erie, that MacDonald had gone to her for help. And she had said, if you go down to the river, you'll find a black goose in the flock, and you need to shoot that goose with a silver bullet. This is a true story. So MacDonald came back, and he went down the river, and there was the black goose in the flock. Shot the bird, but only wounded it in the wing. And the woman that he believed was part of this activity was a native woman that lived nearby, and he went to visit her, and there she was sitting on her porch with her arm in a sling. End of the story, into the hauntings. Is that fascinating, right?
Do you hear that a lot when you've gone to these towns and talked to locals, that every town has a ghost story or a myth of some sort?
Absolutely.
Why do you think that is, that every town has its ghost story or myth of that sort?
I don't, well, good question. I mean, who knows for sure? I mean, it happens. We're I think, a world of people that we always weave these stories and have these experiences, and they're passed down to generations, and it grows from there. But they're not all true.
Well,
right?
When you write a history book like this, how do you pick out the true stories from the ones that, really don't sound true or whatnot?
I have to find someone that's connected to the story or witnessed the activity. So then I know it's happened.
But how do you find someone like that when it happened in 1889?
If it's I can track the family down sometimes. Like if I'm on a murder story that happened way back then, I may find a direct descendant of that family.
Do you think that local history and local travel is overlooked by many people?
Yeah, I think so. I think we can promote it a lot better. And I think we don't, because we don't have that knowledge base. I think if we took these books and other authors writing these books, and the people that do the tourism in the area or the community really kind of zeroed in on these books, it's a wealth of information to promote the community, but it often gets overlooked, right?
Is that why you write these books, to try to convince people to stay local?
Well, I want people to get out and explore their own backyard, and other people to come out of their backyard and explore someone else's.
Now, you are actually related yourself to an important character in one of these small towns. You talk about your great-great-grandfather.
Yeah, Henry Gone, on my mother's side. He traveled from England to India, and he kept journals. And the thing that he entered in his journals were herb remedies for diseases. We still have the journals in the family.
Oh, really?
Anyway, so Henry, in 1849, for whatever reason, signed up to go in search of Franklin. And he was on the HMS Investigator, left Southampton, England, for our Arctic. And they got up to near Baffin Island, and they were immediately iced in, but the ice never released its grip on the ship. They were marooned up there for 3 years. Wow. Numerous members of the crew died. Henry made it, but they never found Franklin, but they found the Northwest Passage. The crew members were rescued 3 years later, go back to England, and there was a reward for finding the Northwest Passage, a considerable sum. So Henry got a portion of it, and he came back to Canada and settled in the village of Ivanhoe, north of Belleville, and opened up the Ivanhoe Cheese Company, which is still going today, and people eat Ivanhoe cheese in Ontario. So when Henry died, though, he died a pauper. So he was buried in the corner of his cornfield of his farm. And about 25 years ago, the township raised some money and erected a monument for Henry.
Wow.
And it's there today, Arctic explorer Henry Gone. So
now, when you visit the new monument that you've put up now, that they've put up now,
Yep.
what goes through your mind?
Well, I think, it's a good example of a family that often are not associated with their roots, and we should have erected the monument years ago. We never did, right? And so Henry got forgotten in the family, really. So thanks to a township, it brought Henry back to light and to us. So I just, to have that sense of history in the family, for me, kind of promotes me as a writer. That's why I write, because I have those deep roots in Canadian history, right? Mm-hmm. With a relative. So, yeah.
Terry, thank you so much.
Yeah, nice. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
So now I'm with Catherine Randall, owner of Curiosity House Books here in Creemore, Ontario. Do you still see local history books? Are they popular?
Yes, yeah, they're really popular, especially in a small town like this. Yes, people come in and they usually self-publish and ask us if we want to carry them. And so if it's within a certain radius, we carry the book. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What kind of a significance do books like that have on small towns like Creemore?
Well, it gives people a sense of their history and identity, and they love reading about the old buildings and ghosts, maybe. You were talking to Terry earlier, and in one of his books he has a chapter on a farm just outside of Creemore. And I think it's important to people to know what the background of the town is, especially either if they're new here, a sense of belonging, or if their family has grown up here, if they're from generations past. Also it gives them a sense of their place in history.
You have 3 other recommendations, local history based. Mm-hmm. Let's start with the first one here.
So the first one is it's a local author, Helen Emmett Blackburn. She grew up in this area. Her family is from this area. She's a retired teacher, and she is our local historian. And she self-publishes her books. We've sold hundreds of her books. This is her second book, and she's working on her third book. And it's called The Night Train to Creemore. So it's the years 1872 to 1901. Now she's currently working on one about the First World War and the people that went to the war. The next one is a book that you might find, that you would certainly find in Toronto. Beautiful Ontario Towns. There is a chapter on Creemore in here, but there's a map here which shows the towns in red where there are chapters. Mm-hmm. So this is a wonderful book to give somebody or to buy to just have a purpose for your traveling around.
Like a road trip in Ontario.
A road trip in Ontario of beautiful southern Ontario towns. Everybody knows Stuart McLean, right? The Vinyl Cafe. And in his program, he travels across Canada, visiting small towns and doing his program from there. And so he's put together a book, Welcome Home, Travels in Small Town Canada. And he's very funny. And also he really captures the essence of small towns, I think, the quirkiness of them. And, every small town has something that they're famous for. We're famous for our beer. And the mad and noisy rivers which come together in Creemore.
So these are small towns
So
across
these are
Canada,
small towns across Canada. So this is a great gift for somebody who's visiting Canada. We get visitors coming in here all summer long who are visiting from Europe or the East or wherever, or the States, or anybody in Canada.
Catherine, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Well, you can find the info on all these 3 books as well as Terry's book on our website, bookendstv.com.